I think the plan for today was to go over the issue that's linked to number one. I will say I have not participated in the issue yet, which might make it a bit more of a challenge. And my plan was to do that this morning, and then, best laid plans. So I think we could still start here. I don't know what the best way to sort of go through this, or Pedro, if you want to sort of like share and go through some of the things that you put in here and we can discuss those, or if anyone has other thoughts about what to look at or do here.
Yeah, so I think I went through the questions, the prompts, and also the themes. And I think that what we had been discussing in that other issue and in the recent weeks about problem areas fits very well with what is being asked of us right now. And I kind of, in my comment there, I kind of tried to overlay those with the prompts: biggest competitive gaps, upselling opportunities, lovable experience, and risk to lost deals and churning customers. I mean, I might have done this more from a user experience standpoint. So, for example, in terms of risk to lost deals or churning customers, for me, the two biggest risks are performance and navigation cluttered UI, and not so much new features. So it's improving what we already have, not enhancing existing features, not adding new features. But I might be wrong. If there are other opportunities, or if we're losing deals because of we don't have, I mean, it's likely that we're losing deals because we don't have feature A or B, but how big is that risk? And if it's a consistent loss due to a specific feature that we're missing. But anyway, yeah, biggest competitive gaps, I think, again, performance and navigation cluttered UI. We also have the commit by commit code review, the cross-project merge requests. These are also things that that customers have asked for. And yeah, and it's something that we could fill those gaps. Some competitors do this very well, others not so much. It's something that people have been asking and could give us a competitive edge. And then to put us on par with other competitors, we haven't really built a good review feature. So our batch comments feature, and we could add more value to it. So that's another opportunity. Yeah, I could go on and talk about these other things that I wrote here. I don't know if someone wants to stop me there and comment or ask questions.
Do you think commit by commit and cross-project MRs are also probably part of losing customers or churn or lost deals? They could probably go there too, right? Or do you think they're just purely competitive gaps? Or you don't have
I think commit by commit, yes. Cross-project MRs, I'm not sure. Because it seems like a more specific use case, and it's something that you can maybe go around with some tooling, perhaps. And I'm not aware of anyone doing this particularly well. I mean, another tool I meant. And so, yeah, probably we're losing deals because of this. I don't know how big those losses are. and if they justify us looking into this and taking focus away from other things that impact all of GitLab basically, and all the users that use GitLab, like for example performance and navigation clarity. Why? You tell me. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree on commit by commit. I know of a handful of lost users, seats, customers because of it, but not a tremendous amount. And it's largely not like commit by commit explicitly. It's people just want Garrett in GitHub or in GitLab. It's not that they want like they want a different tool entirely. I wasn't here when much of the cross project MR's work was done, so I don't have opinions or haven't been brought into many of those conversations about sort of I think what we had determined to super merge, but I also know it's been through like an opportunity canvas before.
Yeah. And these two things, that they are huge, or could become huge things for us to work on. So I also added a question here because I'm not sure. And the issue that Sarah created, I interpreted this as a short-term vision. So the problems would be solved or addressed until the end of the fiscal year, which is January 31st. So that's like a quarter left. That was my impression because of how it's written in the issue description. I don't know if that's accurate, or what is the timeline, and what is the size of the problems that we can bring?
Direction pages, I think, typically outline like a grand vision, and then explicit work that takes place over like a year or less is sort of, I think, like the scope of a direction page. But then like group pages are sort of a new thing that are going to come out of this that have potentially longer timeframes. I think stage pages and section pages do like 3 and 5 year horizons. So if you think that this will roll up, like I think explicitly you could say like, let's just take commit by commit. If we were going down the commit by commit path, I don't think there's an expectation that entirety of that vision is realized in a year or by the end of the fiscal year. I think the expectation is that it's important to our vision and something that we would embark on, but it would roll up over longer periods of times, sort of as you cascade it upwards. So I don't think the work necessarily needs to be completed.
Okay.
Iteration too, right? Like we might start on something, get part of the way down there, and then yeah, I can add that as a comment too if you want, if it makes more sense to come from you.
Okay. Yeah, and then upselling opportunities is, as I discussed previously, approval rules, reviewers, and code owners. I think it's something that we could leverage and work together with source code to have this, just a better experience and an experience that you can more easily communicate the value once you have a story and you can show it to customers and they're like, hey, this is really easy to manage. It's really easy to use. Everything is in the same place. It's intuitive. And so it makes sense for us to do that. We talked about also the relationship between approval rules and reviewers, and then the reviewer suggestion auto assignment that the applied machine learning group is working on. It's also another thing, but I'm not sure. I mean, this is more right now, more in their part, so not necessarily inside of code review, although we will have to inherit whatever they do, and we have a stake here in terms of the user experience. So this is also an upselling opportunity and things that we can add as features that people will have to upgrade to use, for example. Comments, thoughts?
Would I be correct in reading this as this is all one like upselling opportunity? There's like one, maybe it's two with reviewers. Is it one sort of around? It's one sort of around approval rules and reviewers. There's like a few things that you would do in that area, but it's one sort of the only paid path, right? Like I should think of these as one thing, I guess, is maybe.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we don't have to discuss the details now, so I'm okay with that. I don't have a strong opinion at the moment.
I just mean, like, would you? Maybe let me think. If you think about like code review, and like code review has very few paid features as it stands today, and very few free things that you could turn, like you could add more value to turn them into paid features. Sort of all that we have is really like, and technically we sort of don't even own approval rules. We really only have like approval rules. I'm not even, now that I'm thinking through this, I don't even know if we have any paid features in code review. And it's not because like we don't have paid features. It's because like I've had this conversation with others. Like we used to have approval rules when it was source code review, and then like those got split, and so we lost that paid feature. If you think about like the things that compliance group works on, where they're working on like enforcement across groups with approval rules, like that would have at one point prior to the compliance group existing been paid code review features or paid source code features. On review, similarly, right? Like smarter reviewer selection would have been a paid code review feature. Now it's technically belongs to like the applied ML group. And so like it's their paid feature, not our paid feature. And so it's not that we don't have paid features. It's that like anything that we would do is like, oh, every time we like get to the point of paid features, other groups sort of like own the paid surface area. Whereas this is like the one, I guess like you're upselling here when I read these, there's not like, you don't have like two or three ideas here. We really got like one idea around approval rules and reviewers and sort of like making that experience stronger, but it's not like we're talking about approval rules, reviewers as either two separate things, or we're not talking about some other like unknown, non-existent paid feature that's like, we have a free thing in the product, and if we spent more time on it, we could make that like the paid feature.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clear or not.
I mean, there could be other opportunities. These are the ones that immediately came to mind as directly affecting code review without using anything else and just focusing on the pure review cycle. And yeah, here I'm not necessarily thinking about paid features just inside of code review, because as you said, like these affect code review in the organization structure. They ended up in other groups, but if those groups didn't exist, it would fall into us, right? So it's just a matter of organization. So I think it's worth talking about these, and even if it's just to elevate the whole experience, because in the end, in the user journey and through the user's eyes, they don't care which group it comes from. They will see these features as code review features, features attached to the concept and the activity of reviewing code. So they don't care about that. I think it's different when you consider then CI and automated review systems that tell you, hey, this is a code quality issue, or this is a security issue, or the pipeline is failing. That is, they also review code, but I think it's a different mental model. Here, I think users consider this to be part of the code review activity. And there may be other, as I said, other upselling opportunities, but I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about them because I also think that because we have these groups that can help us with these upselling opportunities, I'm much more comfortable with us spending time on the lovable experience and addressing the performance and just the current UX than new features. And that's something that we talked in the past as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, and then level experience. And here I'm just thinking about what things we can do that will impact the biggest audience of code review. And I think what Annabelle highlighted in another comment in this issue of understanding how changes are connected across the repository and how changes in this file are related to changes could affect other files with native code intelligence, for example, or allowing people to browse the repository inside of a merge request without having to go to the repository view or without having to clone and check out the branch locally, because that's what developers do. They just don't necessarily only look at the changed lines. They look at how those changed lines are related to other files and other parts of the repository. I think this is something that could make the experience more lovable, because essentially what we're trying to do here is move people away from their IDEs into GitLab. And I think what we're doing with the VS Code extension, it's really good because we're attacking is a strong verb, but we're connecting with users at the touch points and that they already know and where they're always in. And on the other side, I think we could do the same thing. So VS Code, we're bringing GitLab into VS Code. And from GitLab side, I think an experience that can be more livable is to bring more of the IDE into GitLab and into the code review experience. Then what I already mentioned, make merge request UI more organized in the experience and adding value to our batch comments. I think all of these are, I'm repeating myself a little bit because all of these are kind of related. I think the biggest gap is for sure the upselling opportunities, because these are in operation, these are offloaded to other groups.
Cool. I appreciate you going through that, Pedro. That's helpful. I think those are those seem in line sort of with how we've been thinking and talking for many months now. So it nothing seems super surprising in there, which I guess is both good and maybe not quite the point of the exercise, but I guess it's good.
I think it goes to show that we've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know about other groups. I looked at Mural, and it seemed like Editor has a hard time because they have so many categories, different categories. Wiki, snippets, web ID. It's a lot. So I think they might have a harder time connecting all of that because they have such a big surface area. Yeah, I don't know. This is my opinion, and you said that what you just said, like it seems like there are no surprises. I then interpret that as you think more or less along the same lines, and so I think that's good.
Yeah, I nothing there is surprising, and I would sort of agree that. And you're right. We had this issue a month or two ago where we sort of nailed down that we were going to think about user experience and not look at these other things. And so I think that's where our head has been pretty consistently for a while too. So that makes sense. You did have like a last question in here about problem statements, because one of the outputs being looked for is opportunity canvases. And like what I was thinking for those, I think one that I'd like to do, and because I am interested, is either validating another editor to support like a local IDE, or investing in the command line GitLab tool as well. Either one of those is high on my personal interest lists. But I don't have another good problem. So that's one of the ones that I want to do. And we sort of started talking about that with JetBrains. And so I'll add that as a comment there. That I think that's an area that we should probably explore. I think we've reached a interesting maturity point with VS Code that we can continue to optimize for sort of little things, but we're beholden to other groups now, which is one of the problems that the extensions will always have. We're missing support for things that we want to do in VS Code, and we need other groups to allocate engineers to build APIs and do all these other things. And unless they are willing to do that, then that's there's not much we can do to move more of GitLab into that space. So it sort of seems like an opportunity to go do something else and build more market share in what we consider like local developer environments versus trying to continue to build more features in one local development environment. So that's one. I think the other one is, and then I don't know what I would do for another one. I think it's probably something in the merge request space that we need to figure out, but because we haven't been looking about features, I haven't been thinking about problems necessary to go solve that we haven't already done opportunity canvases for, or looked at sort of in depth.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that we need to solve with the VS Code extension at the moment? Is it adding more features to it, or is it gaining more users, or is it another thing?
I think it's adoption. I think adoption is still the biggest hurdle the extension has. If you think about sort of involved, right, for a developer to even find out it exists and then set it up. I think once someone finds out it exists, they set it up, and then it's installed in their VS Code, and they sort of move on with their life. And if they click onto it and use a feature, then we know we've made requests and we get that information. The blue bar at the bottom gives a bunch of GitLab status as soon as you sort of install and activate the extension. So, but I think getting people to even become aware of it is where the challenge is right now. Adoption is just hard and slow, and we don't market. It's not like there's a page on the GitLab website that talks about it, right? It might be in a feature block, but that's sort of the extent of it existing in terms of marketing materials. I don't think we have partners or salespeople that promote it, because it's not sort of the primary flow that they're selling. They're trying to sell GitLab as an integrated tool, and this is supportive but counter to some of that, right? There is a bit of a disconnect in terms of strategy, in terms of being in local IDEs. But I think it's to me, it's an adoption issue. If you look at sort of the ramp of the malgraphs and stuff, it seems like .com has, I don't want to say plateaued, but it isn't gaining very quickly. And if you think about how many users are on GitLab.com, and then you think about what most research suggests, that there's 50% of market share exists in VS Code, we should have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of more users than there are on the extension. But if I can't ever tell you that it exists, then you don't get it, and then I don't get you as a user. And so I think that's where I don't think we're missing features. I think there's enough in there that provides value to a user. And it's not like the addition of one extension to your VS Code is sort of like detrimental to your overall VS Code experience, so you're not willing to do it. I think it's, you have to know it's there and think that, like, and get it that way.
Yeah, I wonder if it's in that case, does VS Code, is VS Code the biggest IDE in terms of market share?
As an individual IDE, it is largely regarded, yes, to have the biggest market share. It gets complicated because JetBrains IDEs all get reported separately, but they share a common extension framework. So from an integrator perspective, you could aggregate all of them and then it becomes fairly comparable. But most data, when I've looked at it, shows VS Code at over 50%. So like, you have to assume it's sort of the largest, even if you aggregated all of the JetBrains items.
Yeah, I'm wondering if then what we should work on more is the adoption part of VS Code and not so much JetBrains, because we would then probably have the same problem of building adoption for JetBrains. And then also the problem having to then mature two extensions at the same time and maintain them. And so if we haven't solved VS Code, I mean, from a feature perspective, yes, but not from an adoption perspective, we haven't solved VS Code. Yeah, I'm wondering if going for JetBrains couldn't just, dilute our already scarce resources and attention.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I largely think about adoption at this point being outside of our group in engineering. It almost feels like something that like could be driven with marketing and sales and TAMs and product, versus like taking away capacity out of sort of the group's throughput and engineering efforts, right? I don't think adoption is, in this case, is like the onboarding is too hard, or we need to fix XYZ to get sort of those triggers in VS Code happening. I think the adoption is, I'd say it's more broadly like awareness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand, right? So if you don't have adoption, much like dogfooding at GitLab, if people don't use it, it's difficult for us to know what we need to improve, what we need to work on next, if it's valuable or not. We don't have critical mass. So yeah, I don't know. My personal view is that we should invest more in that, or try to instrument things maybe better so that we can prove the value, and that there's a really large gap here, and that we need other departments to help us raise awareness. I don't know. But anyway, we're over time, but about the crafting problem statements for tomorrow, if you want, and if you're able to work on that today, I can then look at the mural and provide some feedback if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll that's my plan for the rest of the day, is to sort of work on this stuff. And so I'll make sure that you got a comment before I'm out in a day, and then you can look at it in the morning tomorrow.
Okay, awesome. Good talking with you, Kai, and keep growing that beard.
Yeah.